They say time changes people. But sometimes, it just brings them back to the same crossroad, the same faces, the same unfinished lesson. This is the story of Malcolm Reed, a man who once had every reason to hate a police officer, and the moment life forced them to see each other, not as enemies but as human. But this story doesn't start with redemption. It starts with suspicion. With blue lights cutting through early morning fog, and a man's dignity hanging in the balance. Malcolm was 36. Father. Business owner. Marine veteran. He ran a small auto repair shop in Charlotte, nothing fancy but his. He worked with his hands, his mind, and a patience that life had tested too many times. It was just after dawn on a Thursday, the kind of morning when the streets still whispered with quiet. He was driving home after an overnight service call, grease still on his knuckles, coffee cooling in the cup holder. That's when he saw the lights, red and blue, spinning behind him like an accusation. "Sir, step out of the vehicle." Those words, no matter how calmly they're said, carry a weight you can feel in your bones. Malcolm rolled down the window, heart steady. "Officer, can I ask what this is about?" "License and registration." The officer's name tag read Hayes. Officer Thomas Hayes. Mid-40s, white, sharp posture, colder tone. He leaned down slightly, scanning the interior. "Your taillight's cracked. Where you headed?" "Home," Malcolm said. "Just finished a service job off Tremont." Hayes nodded, but not like he believed it. His flashlight lingered on the military tags hanging from the rearview mirror. "You serve?" "Yes, sir." "What branch?" "Marine Corps." 8 years. Pause. Then the kind of smirk that says, "I've heard it before." "Mind if I take a look inside the trunk?" Malcolm exhaled slowly. "Is there a reason for a search?" Hayes shrugged. "Standard procedure." But it wasn't standard. They both knew that. See, Malcolm had been through this before. Once in college. Once on the side of a highway in Georgia. And every time the same quiet question followed. Would this be happening if I looked different? He popped the trunk anyway, not out of submission but out of exhaustion. Because sometimes the fight isn't worth the paperwork. Inside were only his tools, socket wrenches, cables, a spare tire. Hayes leaned closer. "Lot of equipment." "You a mechanic?" "Yes, sir. Own my own shop. Reed Automotive on 8th Street. Hayes stared for a moment too long. Then nodded slowly as if surprised. "All right. Sit tight." He walked back to the cruiser, typing something into the computer. The radio crackled. A few minutes felt like an hour. Malcolm sat there, fingers drumming the steering wheel. In his head, his father's voice echoed, "Don't give them a reason, son. Always stay calm." But calm doesn't mean unaffected. And dignity doesn't mean silence. Finally, Hayes returned. "Everything checks out. You're free to go." Malcolm looked at him, really looked at him, and said quietly, "I was free before you stopped me." Then he pulled off. No shouting. No drama. Just a moment that would sit heavy between them for years. 3 years passed. Malcolm's business grew. He hired 2 apprentices, young men from the neighborhood. He volunteered at the local community center, teaching basic car maintenance to teens who couldn't afford repairs. On weekends he took his daughter Layla to the park. She was 8. Bright smile, louder laugh, the kind of child who reminded him that joy was still possible. Life wasn't perfect, but it was honest. Then, one Saturday morning he got a call that would drag the past right back into his present. "Mr. Reed, we're looking for volunteers for the Highway Safety Task Force. Emergency roadside assistance support. The city's contracting small businesses like yours." He almost said no. But the extra income would help expand his shop. So he agreed. For 6 months it was routine. He'd respond to highway calls, help stranded motorists, work alongside first responders. Until one night, a storm rolling over I-77, his radio crackled with a voice that made his chest tighten. "Unit 9 requesting backup. Officer Hayes reporting. Vehicle collision near exit 14. Possible entrapment." That name. That voice. It had been years, but you never forget the tone of a man who once made you feel small. Malcolm grabbed his jacket. "Dispatch, this is Reed Automotive Support. I'm 5 minutes out." Rain hammered the windshield. Visibility near zero. The wipers moved like clock hands trying to outpace chaos. By the time he reached the site, he saw flashing lights bending against the storm. A police cruiser, mangled guardrail, and a semi-truck jackknifed it across 2 lanes. "Over here," a voice shouted through the rain. It was another officer, younger, panicked. Malcolm sprinted toward the wreck. The cruiser was upside down, metal twisted, glass shattered. And inside, barely conscious, was Officer Thomas Hayes. Blood streaked his forehead. The radio was still hissing. He was pinned against the steering column, legs trapped, breath shallow. "Help's on the way," Malcolm said, kneeling. "Just stay with me." Hayes's eyes flickered open. He squinted, voice weak. You're that guy." Malcolm didn't respond. He just checked for a pulse, then grabbed the crowbar from his kit. "Don't talk. Just breathe." Because in that moment, it didn't matter what happened 3 years ago. A man was dying. And humanity doesn't check credentials before it acts. The wind howled. Lightning flashed. Every second counted. The other officer tried to help, but panic makes hands clumsy. Malcolm took control. "Get me the hydraulic spreader from the trunk." He wedged the crowbar beneath the crumpled door frame. Metal groaned like it didn't want to let go. Hayes groaned, voice fading. "Why are you helping me?" Malcolm looked at him, mud on his face, rain in his eyes, and said, "Because you're still breathing." With one final push, the door gave way. Steam hissed from the hood. They pulled Hayes free just before the cruiser's engine caught fire. Flames danced behind them as they dragged him to the shoulder. Paramedics arrived seconds later, sirens wailing like justice delayed. As they loaded him onto the stretcher, Hayes looked at Malcolm again. A man he once doubted, now the reason he was alive. "You saved my life," he whispered. Malcolm just nodded. "Guess we're even now." But the truth? They weren't even. Not yet. Because some debts can't be measured in rescue breaths or split-second courage. Some require something deeper, acknowledgement. And that was still coming. 2 days later, Malcolm was back at his shop. Customers came and went. Wrenches clanked. Life resumed its rhythm. Then the door chimed. A familiar voice said, "Mind if I come in?" Malcolm turned. Officer Hayes stood in the doorway, bandaged arm, walking cane, eyes softer than before. "I wanted to thank you," he said. "You didn't have to help me that night." Malcolm wiped his hands on a rag, leaned against the counter. "I didn't do it for you." Hayes nodded slowly. "I figured. But I owe you anyway." He looked around the shop, at the framed photos on the wall, the old Marine flag, the community first plaque by the register. "You built this. Every bolt." Hayes sighed. "I spent years thinking I knew people by how they looked, how they talked. Turns out I didn't know much at all." Malcolm said nothing. Sometimes silence says enough. Hayes set a folded envelope on the counter. "For you," he said. "It's from the department. And from me." Then he left. Malcolm opened it slowly. Inside, a commendation letter and an invitation. Officer Recognition Ceremony, Charlotte PD. He read it twice, then set it down. He didn't know if he'd go. But deep down he knew this story wasn't finished yet. Because redemption isn't a single moment. It's a choice that keeps asking, now that you've seen the truth, what will you do with it? The letter sat on his kitchen counter for 3 days. Unopened, untouched, unwanted. Every time Malcolm walked past it, his chest tightened. Not from anger, but from the memory it carried. See, forgiveness sounds noble when it's someone else's story. But when it's yours, it asks for more than you think you can give. Layla, his daughter, noticed it first. "Dad, what's that?" He glanced over. "Just a letter." "From the police?" He sighed. "Yeah." She tilted her head, curious. "Are they saying sorry?" That stopped him. He looked at her, this small mirror of his younger self, and wondered how you explain to a child that sometimes an apology isn't enough, but it's still something. He finally opened the envelope. Inside was a formal commendation, the department acknowledging his heroic actions in saving Officer Thomas Hayes. The bottom line read, "We'd like to honor you at our annual recognition ceremony." Malcolm leaned back, staring at the words. He didn't know if it was peace or pity being offered. But either way, it was time to face it. The Charlotte Police Department headquarters glowed under the late afternoon sun. Rows of uniforms. Polished badges. Reporters with cameras lined the steps like vultures waiting for sound bites. Malcolm arrived in his best suit, navy blue, pressed, simple. Not for them but for himself. Because dignity doesn't need validation, it just needs to be seen. Inside, the room buzzed with conversation. Families of officers. City officials. The smell of coffee and nervous pride. And at the center of it all, a podium, a seal of authority, and a line of officers ready to speak. When Officer Hayes took the microphone, Malcolm almost didn't recognize him. The man who once stood with arrogance now looked human, tired, remorseful. Hayes cleared his throat. 3 months ago, I was in a crash on I-77. I shouldn't be standing here today. But because of one man, I am. He paused, voice trembling slightly. Malcolm Reed, the same man I once stopped on the side of the road for a reason that, looking back, had less to do with safety and more to do with me. The room shifted. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. He continued. I didn't see a veteran that day. I didn't see a business owner. I saw what I'd been taught to see, a profile, not a person. The silence was heavy, not the kind you fill but the kind you sit in. I owe my life to a man I once disrespected. And that truth is something I have to live with every day. Then he turned toward Malcolm. Mr. Reed, please join me. Malcolm's chair scraped softly against the floor as he stood. The crowd watched, some clapping, some whispering, some uncomfortable. He walked to the front, each step echoing louder than applause. Hayes extended his hand. For a second, the world seemed to hold its breath. Malcolm looked at the hand that once pointed suspicion his way. Then at the man it belonged to, not a symbol of authority anymore, but a human being trying to make things right. He took it, and the crowd exhaled. Cameras flashed. Reporters scribbled. But Malcolm's voice cut through the noise. I didn't save him because he was a cop, he said quietly. I saved him because he was a man, because somewhere along the line we forgot that part. The audience was still. Even the hum of air conditioning felt muted. Hayes swallowed hard. Thank you, he whispered. Malcolm nodded once. But inside, his mind wasn't done reckoning. Because shaking hands doesn't erase history. It just marks where the next chapter begins. After the ceremony, Hayes found him near the exit. The cameras were gone. The room was quieter. I didn't know if you'd come, he said. Malcolm shrugged. Didn't either. Hayes hesitated. There's something I didn't say up there. Malcolm crossed his arms. Go on. Hayes looked down. When I pulled you over that day, I wasn't following any protocol. I was frustrated, tired, and yeah, biased. You didn't do anything wrong. I just saw someone I didn't understand. Malcolm nodded slowly. Appreciate the honesty. Hayes met his eyes. I'm not asking for forgiveness, but I'm trying to be better. I've started working with the community training unit, bias awareness, procedural reform, the whole deal. Good, Malcolm said. But you know it's not just training that changes people. I know. It's experience. It's humility. It's listening. Hayes nodded again. That's why I'm here. The moment lingered. Two men, once on opposite sides of power, now standing in the same truth. Then Hayes said, there's someone I'd like you to meet. A week later, Malcolm found himself sitting on stage in front of an auditorium full of cadets and officers in training. It was part of a new initiative, Voices of Accountability. The moderator introduced them. Tonight, we're joined by Officer Thomas Hayes, and the man who saved his life, Mr. Malcolm Reed. Applause echoed, polite, uncertain. Hayes spoke first. He told his story, not the version polished for press but the raw one. How he'd profiled Malcolm. How arrogance blinded him. How the accident stripped him down to the truth. Then it was Malcolm's turn. He stood slowly, hands clasped. I'm not here to attack anyone, he began. I'm here because change doesn't start in policy, it starts in perception. He walked across the stage. When you look at someone who doesn't look like you, What's the first story your mind tells you about them? Because whatever that story is, that's where your bias lives. You could feel the room shift, cadets leaning forward, officers lowering their gaze. I've spent my life being seen as a question mark, Malcolm continued. But that night on the highway I learned something. Fear doesn't just exist in victims, it exists in systems that teach people to fear. A hush swept over the auditorium. Then a young officer raised his hand. How do we fix that? Malcolm paused. You start by admitting it exists. Then you stop defending it and start dismantling it. After the session, cadets lined up to shake his hand. Some thanked him. Some apologized for things they hadn't done, and maybe that was the point. Hayes walked beside him to the parking lot. You know, he said, my son watched the ceremony online. He told me, Dad, I want to be like him when I grow up. Malcolm smiled softly. Which one, me or you? Hayes laughed. Both, hopefully. The air was cool. The city skyline glowed in the distance. Funny thing, Malcolm said. When you pulled me over that morning, I thought you were my enemy. But maybe you were just the lesson I needed to learn what grace really looks like. Hayes nodded. And you were the mirror I needed to see myself clearly. They stood there for a moment, the sound of distant sirens fading like a closing chapter. Months later, Malcolm sat in his shop again, Layla helping him wipe down tools. A knock came at the door. It was Hayes, this time without a uniform. I came to drop this off, he said. It was a donation check for the youth mentorship program Malcolm had started with the department. Layla grinned. Are you the officer my dad saved? Hayes chuckled. Guess I am. She tilted her head. So now you're friends? Malcolm smiled. Something like that. Because the truth was, it wasn't friendship built on forgetting. It was one built on remembering and choosing to grow anyway. A year later, a local news station aired a segment titled, From Bias to Brotherhood, A City's Story of Redemption. The camera showed footage from the highway that night, the ceremony, the community program that now brought officers and residents together every month. And there, sitting side by side, were Malcolm and Hayes, laughing quietly between interviews. The reporter asked, What changed everything? Malcolm answered first. Perspective. Hayes added, and courage. Because sometimes the bravest thing you can do is face the person you wronged, and listen. They say time changes people. Maybe that's true. But sometimes, it just gives them another chance to choose better. Malcolm Reed didn't save Officer Hayes for recognition. He did it because the only way to break the cycle is to refuse to repeat it. And Hayes? He didn't spend the rest of his career trying to prove he wasn't biased. He spent it trying to prove he could change. 2 men. One past mistake. One act of mercy. And a reminder that redemption doesn't erase injustice. It transforms it. Because when you save the life of the man who once profiled you, you don't just change him. You change what the world believes is possible. They thought the story would end there. A man saves a cop's life, the same cop who once profiled him. Forgiveness, redemption, cue the headlines. But the world doesn't let stories stay that simple. When the video of their handshake went viral, it wasn't peace people saw. It was polarization. Some called Malcolm a hero. Others called him naive. Some praised Officer Hayes for growth. Others accused him of exploiting the moment for sympathy. Because in a world addicted to outrage, even grace gets dissected. Malcolm stopped checking the comments. Hayes stopped checking the news. But both men knew, if they didn't control their story, someone else would. The first call came from a major news network. They wanted an exclusive interview, America's Unlikely Friendship. Hayes declined. Malcolm hesitated. Maybe we should, Layla said. It might help people see what forgiveness really looks like. He looked at her, torn between fear and faith. Or it might help them twist it into something it's not. She smiled gently. Dad, they already are. At least let them hear your voice. He knew she was right. A week later, they sat under studio lights. 2 chairs, 1 table, too many cameras. The host smiled the way hosts do when they're hunting for sound bites. So, Malcolm, why did you save him? After what he did? Malcolm looked straight into the lens. Because sometimes the hardest thing to do is the one that makes the most sense to your soul. The host turned to Hayes. And Officer Hayes, what do you say to people who think this is just a PR stunt? Hayes didn't blink. They're not wrong to question me. But redemption isn't something you prove. It's something you practice. The studio fell silent. For once, even the cameras seemed to stop breathing. The segment went viral that night. Not because it was sensational, but because it was real. But the more real something feels, the more people project their pain onto it. A week later, Malcolm's inbox flooded again. Some messages were beautiful. Letters from teachers showing the video to their students, parents saying they finally had the courage to talk to their kids about bias. Others weren't. You're weak. You let him off too easy. He didn't deserve saving. And for every hate message, there was one addressed to Hayes too. Traitor. You made cops look bad. Don't expect a medal for being politically correct. It was the same hatred, just wearing different uniforms. One night, Hayes showed up at Malcolm's shop. I'm sorry, he said. For what? For the noise. For dragging your life into this mess again. Malcolm shook his head. You didn't drag me into it. The world just isn't used to seeing people heal publicly. Hayes leaned against the counter. Feels like we're losing control of the story. Malcolm looked up. Then maybe it's time we write it ourselves. A month later, they hosted a community town hall. From conflict to connection. It wasn't flashy. No cameras. No press. Just a gym full of residents, officers, and kids from Layla's school sitting cross-legged on the floor. Malcolm stood on one side, Hayes on the other. This isn't a show, Malcolm began. It's a conversation. He looked out at the crowd. I've been the man pulled over for fitting a description. I've been the man they thought didn't belong. And I've also been the man who had a choice, to hate or to heal. He gestured toward Hayes. This man made the same choice. And now we're standing here not because we agree on everything, but because we finally decided to listen. The gym was silent. Then a voice rose from the crowd, a young black teenager. What if forgiving just makes them forget what they did? Malcolm nodded slowly. That's a fair question. Forgiving isn't forgetting. It's remembering without letting it poison you. Then an older white officer raised his hand. What if we're afraid? Afraid of saying the wrong thing? Afraid of being blamed for things we didn't do? Hayes answered this time. Then say that. Fear doesn't disappear when you hide it, it disappears when you face it. It wasn't a perfect meeting, but it was honest. And honesty, when it's rare, feels like revolution. Change is fragile. And sometimes the world tests it just to see if it's real. One evening, after another workshop, Malcolm and Hayes walked to their cars in the rain. They were laughing about something small, something ordinary. That's when they heard it. Tires screeching. Voices yelling. Across the street, a teenage boy was being pinned against a wall by an officer. A crowd had started filming. Shouts filled the air. Hayes froze. Not again. Malcolm's instincts kicked in. Then stop it. They ran over. Hayes called out, Officer. That's enough. The young cop turned, startled. Sir, he was resisting. No, Hayes said firmly. He was scared. There's a difference. The kid was crying, hands shaking. I didn't do anything, I swear. Malcolm stepped closer, placing a hand on the officer's arm. Breathe. Let's start over. The tension crackled, but then it broke. The officer eased up. The boy collapsed to his knees, sobbing. And for a moment, the world paused. The cameras captured it, the former profiler now stopping someone else from making his mistake. It went viral again. But this time, the narrative had changed. The footage of that moment, Hayes intervening, Malcolm de-escalating, spread like wildfire. News anchors called it a living lesson in accountability. Activists called it a glimpse of what reform can look like. Even critics ran out of things to twist. The department launched new training modeled on what they'd done together. Community groups reached out for collaborations. And for the first time in years, the noise around their names wasn't outrage, it was hope. At a small press event, a reporter asked Malcolm, "Do you think one story can really change the system?" He smiled faintly. Not one story. but maybe one seed. 2 years passed. Malcolm stood at a podium in a crowded auditorium. Behind him, a banner read, "The Reed Hayes Initiative for Restorative Policing." Layla, now a teenager, sat in the front row, beaming. Next to her, Hayes adjusted his tie nervously. When Malcolm spoke, his voice carried a calm weight. This isn't about rewriting the past. It's about reimagining the future. Because justice and empathy don't have to compete, they can coexist. Applause filled the hall. Afterward, a young cadet approached them. "Mr. Reed, Officer Hayes, I joined the force because of your story." Hayes grinned. "Then promise me something." Led with courage, not fear. The cadet nodded. "I will." Malcolm clapped his shoulder. "And don't forget, when you put on that badge, it should make you more human, not less." Later that night, Malcolm sat on his porch. The crickets sang softly. The hum of the city felt gentler now. Hayes joined him, 2 mugs of coffee in hand. "Funny," Hayes said. 2 years ago, we couldn't be in the same room without tension." Malcolm chuckled. "Now look at us, saving the world one awkward seminar at a time." They laughed. Not the kind of laugh that hides pain, the kind that releases it. Hayes grew quiet. "You ever think about that night on the highway?" "Every day," Malcolm said. "But not the way I used to." "How so?" "I used to replay the injustice. Now I just replay the moment I decided to act. Not out of anger, but out of something bigger." Hayes nodded slowly. "Grace." "Yeah, grace." They sat in silence, watching the first light of dawn break through the trees. They say enemies can't become allies. That once you've been hurt, you can't heal in the same place that broke you. But sometimes forgiveness isn't a return, it's a rebirth. Malcolm Reed didn't save a cop's life to make a point. He did it because saving one life was his way of saving his own peace. And Thomas Hayes didn't change overnight. He changed the moment he decided that accountability wasn't punishment, it was purpose. 2 men, 1 moment, and 1,000 others who'll never look at each other the same again. Because when grace walks into the room, bias doesn't stand a chance. The camera lingers on them, 2 silhouettes on the porch, sharing coffee and quiet understanding as the sun rises on a new day. They say you can't rewrite the past, but maybe you can redeem it.